A massive bolt of lightning tears down from the dark, stormy sky, lighting up the clouds. The lightning slams into the ground where a man is standing, creating a huge circular shockwave and cracking the earth all around him. Close-up of the man's upper body in the rain, showing his muscular arm and serious expression, hinting that he's an extremely powerful fighter. The man stands under the lightning in the rain, clutching his bleeding side but still upright. Close-up of his face reveals him as the Fist King, calm and serious despite his injuries. His eye widens in shock, and in the next instant his body is violently torn apart by a fatal attack. He turns around in the rain and sees masked enemies all around him, realizing he's been ambushed. Close-up of his face as he looks tired but focused, thinking about the situation. He looks up to a cliff where two important figures stand watching him, clearly the leaders behind the ambush. The two men on the cliff are shown clearly, calm and confident as they look down at him. Close-up of the Fist King's tense face as he studies them, unsure who they are. He suddenly dashes forward and launches a powerful kick, sending a fallen enemy's body hurtling up toward the two men on the cliff. The masked man is flung toward the swordsman and desperately reaches out to him for help. The swordsman calmly cuts him down with a single slash, killing him midair. The Fist King drops back to the ground and stands alone in the rain, watching. The Fist King watches and realizes the swordsman just cut down his own ally without a second thought. Close-up of the swordsman and his blade shows a distinctive tag / symbol hanging from his sword, marking his group. The Fist King connects the symbol with the man's cruelty and starts to speak to the two enemies, recognizing what they are. The Fist King powers up, eyes glowing, and calls out that they're from the demonic faction. One of the enemies steps forward through the rain, acknowledging him. That enemy casually walks closer, praising how long the Fist King has lasted, while the Fist King glares back, clearly fed up and ready to fight. The Fist King clenches his fist and leans forward, bloodied but fierce, clearly declaring he'll finish the fight quickly. The swordsman smirks, drawing his blade with casual confidence. He then launches himself forward in a blur, sending a sweeping wave of dark purple sword energy straight at the Fist King. The Fist King bursts forward through the storm of sword energy, his body wrapped in blue lightning as he slips right past the swordsman's strike. He appears in front of the swordsman and drives a lightning-charged punch into his body, blasting him back in a flash of blue light. The swordsman staggers, stunned by his speed, while the Fist King coolly marks this as the first of his promised 10 attacks. He drives in with another lightning-charged punch, starting his second hit. He unleashes a rapid barrage of blows, pounding the swordsman's body again and again. He continues the combo with more fast punches, but notices something's off. None of his hits are landing on the man's vital points. As he moves in to strike again, purple energy threads spread around him from the man on the cliff, making his body feel restrained. Close-up shows the fan-wielding man controlling those threads with his fingers, while the Fist King realizes he's being bound by that guy's technique. The swordsman calmly grips his sword hilt, getting ready to take advantage of the opening. With his movements restricted, the swordsman steps in and drives his blade straight through the Fist King's back and out his chest. The Fist King staggers, blood dripping from his mouth as he grabs at the sword stuck in his body. The swordsman leans in close, rain running down his face, declaring that this is the end of the Fist King's era. Even with the sword still through his body, the Fist King seizes the swordsman and raises a fist crackling with lightning, about to blast him at point-blank range. The fan-wielding man realizes what's happening just as a massive lightning explosion erupts, swallowing the Fist King and the swordsman. After the blast, the swordsman is shown again, alive and steady, looking to the side with a calm, cold expression. The swordsman drops to a knee, bleeding from the stomach but laughing, clearly still alive and excited by the fight. A wide shot shows the battlefield ripped open into a long, deep trench from the Fist King's final lightning blast. The fan-wielding man smiles beside him, calm and smug, talking about how close that blast was and hinting that it was only avoided thanks to someone's intervention. The swordsman leans over the fallen Fist King and pokes his head, mocking him. Suddenly, the Fist King surges up and smashes an uppercut into the swordsman's chin. The Fist King grabs him from behind, bloody but grimly satisfied, and finishes his 10th and final strike. The swordsman collapses with the Fist King's arms still around his neck, while the fan guy looks shocked. The Fist King feels his strength draining and thinks this is the end for him. Lying face down in the rain, he struggles to breathe, blood running from his mouth. His eyes slowly close as he makes one last wish in his mind before death. Over a splatter of blood, his final regret appears. He wishes he could have landed one more hit. Text on a black background announces his name and title. The Fist King, Dan Woozing. Another line of text states that he has died at someone else's hands, confirming his death. Text reveals who killed him. The Demon Faction. Scene shifts as blue lightning crashes down in a completely different place, a crow flying past the blast. We cut to a calm daytime view of a large mountain estate built over water, labeled as the Jiahua Mountain Safe House. The crow perches outside an open window of a quiet room, where someone is standing beside a bed inside the safe house. Everything goes blurry and bright, like someone is waking up suddenly and their vision hasn't focused yet. A surprised voice reacts. A worried attendant leans into view, looking down toward the bed and calling out to their master, checking if they're okay. We see a calm, tidy room with medicine and decor, as the person in bed realizes they must have been treated. A long-haired young man suddenly sits up, dizzy, while the maid quickly supports him. He looks down at his body and touches his side, surprised to find no wounds, while the maid fusses over him and offers water. He accepts the water and sits on the bed while the maid serves him, but he's confused when she calls him First Young Master. He walks over to a mirror, wondering why she used that title, and sees an unfamiliar face staring back at him. Close-up of his shocked expression as he realizes he's in someone else's body. He does a full-on spit take, spraying his drink in shock while the maid stands in front of him, clueless. Panicking, he grabs at his face in front of the mirror, convinced someone put a fake mask on him. He tugs at the skin on his neck and realizes there's no seam at all. This isn't a mask. This face is really his now. He slumps at the table in front of the mirror, completely drained and confused, while the maid watches nervously from behind. Seeing how out of it he looks, the maid panics and runs off, saying she'll bring the doctor. Left alone, he stares at his reflection with a tense, worried expression, trying to process what's happened to him. The maid hurries out of the room, thinking to herself that her young master is acting extra strange today. Left alone on the bed, he calmly analyzes the situation, deciding this body swap can't be the work of the demonic faction or they'd already rule the martial world. He stares hard into the mirror, gripping the frame, and wonders whose face and body he's ended up in. From behind, he looks around the room, deciding he'll have to figure out whose body this is. He tests a basic fighting stance and a few movements, but his posture is shaky and unsteady. He nearly collapses, clutching his arm and whining internally that this body is pathetic and wobbly, like a newborn fawn. He slumps at the desk, already fed up, judging this new body as completely useless. His eyes fall on an envelope on the table labeled Yunhua Merchant Group. He recalls the name, a big, wealthy merchant group based near Jiahua Mountain, famous enough that even someone like him has heard of them. He looks at the envelope and reads the recipient's name, Li Jin Eon of the Yunhua Merchant Group. Narration explains that the body he's in belongs to Li Jin Eon, the eldest son of that wealthy merchant family. He flips through a pile of letters and realizes they're all about borrowing money, gambling, and women, so the original Li Jin Eon was a total wastrel. He face-bombs, imagining the former Li Jin Eon drinking and wasting money, and judges him as a complete loser. He thinks it through. This isn't sorcery, not a mask, and he doesn't feel any weird energy in his body. An image of his old Fist King body appears behind him as he wonders if this is actually reincarnation. He sits at the table staring off, thinking he must have gone crazy after everything that's happened. He turns his head as someone shouts for the first young master. An elderly physician sprints in, panicked, grabs his shoulders and fusses over him, urgently asking if he's all right. He stiffens when the old doctor grabs him, and we see the Fist King's inner self behind him thinking suspiciously who this guy is. The physician, out of breath, clutches his hand and frets, saying he rushed over because he heard something was wrong. He pulls himself together, presses a hand to his chest, and calmly tells the doctor he's fine and there's no need to worry. The doctor smiles in relief and has the servants bring in the usual meal he always prepares for Lee Jian. A steaming bowl of rich herbal chicken soup is set in front of him. He glares over the rim of the bowl, realizing this powerful tonic is fine for a healthy person but dangerously heavy for Lee Jian's weak body, and suspects the doctor's intentions. He remembers how the doctor secretly tried to check his pulse earlier, confirming the old man was suspicious of his sudden good condition. He thinks to himself that the doctor must have noticed how unusually healthy Lee Jian looks now. We see the doctor smiling sweetly while praising the soup, saying it'll make him as strong as tournament youths. But the Fist King compares him to a snake hiding poison behind a friendly face. He waves a hand and pretends he's not hungry, telling the doctor to just leave the soup on the table. He gently but firmly steers the doctor toward the door and sends him out, saying he wants to rest and not be disturbed. After sending the doctor away, he lets out a breath of relief and starts thinking, using the tournament's timeline to gauge when he died. While tying his hair back, he concludes that not much time has passed since his death in his old body, which works in his favor. An image of the two demonic faction men appears in his mind as he realizes they're definitely still alive, marking them as his future targets. He thinks about the scheming physician and realizes he's now surrounded by people who deserve a beating. He cracks his knuckles with a dark grin, fired up and determined. Close-up of his eyes as he makes a fierce vow to take revenge and finish his enemies with a single punch next time. Close-up of a table full of proper dishes instead of plain porridge, showing a much heartier meal prepared. Close-up of a table full of proper dishes instead of plain porridge, showing a much heartier meal prepared. The maids chat around the table, surprised and happy that the young master's appetite has grown so much compared to before. Cut to Lee Jian coming back from training, shirtless and sweating, his body already looking stronger and more athletic than the sickly guy he used to be. He walks in toweling off, notices the food already set out, and heads over to the table. Still shirtless, he passes by the maids, casually telling them to keep breakfast light and simple from now on. As he moves away, the maids huddle together and quietly remark that he really does look much healthier than before. He's calmly eating breakfast, looking relaxed and in a good mood. He pauses with a mouthful of rice and glances toward the door as the maids nervously announce a visitor. The shady physician from before steps into the room, brushing past the anxious maids. Jian watches the doctor walk in without proper manners and smirks to himself, finding him rude. The physician suddenly puts on an over-the-top cheerful face, beaming and waving energetically at Jian. Jian looks at him with a flat, unimpressed expression, thinking how strange it is that this guy acts so fawning and submissive around him. Jian smirks to himself, deciding it's time to test and corner this scheming rat of a doctor. He calmly sips his tea at the table and casually questions physician Gong's son, who immediately looks nervous and confused. The doctor clings to him in an overly friendly way, whining about missing him and fake complaining that all his hard treatment was wasted now that Jian looks so healthy, while Jian just lets him talk and observes. Jian's lips curl into a small, sharp smile as he repeats the word effort, clearly about to pounce. Calmly sipping his tea, he coolly calls out the doctor's so-called treatment, mentioning the dragon phoenix soup as if exposing a trap. The physician freezes, eyes wide and sweating, realizing Jian has seen through him. The physician hurriedly tries to smooth things over, insisting the dragon phoenix soup is just a healthy tonic. Jian smiles with fake innocence and casually says he assumed it was poison, clearly needling him. The doctor panics and loudly reintroduces himself as Jineon's loyal personal physician, desperate to look innocent while Jineon watches him with suspicion. Flustered, the physician turns to leave, acting offended and saying he'll go if he's not welcome. Jineon, still calmly eating, calls out to him, stopping him at the door. With a cold, sharpened look, Jineon reminds him who the real master of this house is, basically putting the doctor back in his place. The physician's face tightens in fear, realizing how dangerous the situation is. Dan Woozing suddenly lightens the mood with a laugh, and the physician awkwardly relaxes and bows. Woozing asks him to fetch writing tools for a letter, and the physician obediently goes to the desk to get them. While casually eating, Jineon tells physician Gongsun that he'll dictate, and the doctor will write. Gongsun begins writing a polite letter, stating that because Sir Li Jineon is gravely ill, he has to remain at the villa to treat him. The next line, Jineon dictates, turns sharp and ominous, sounding like a veiled confession about Gongsun's own stubbornly long life. The physician's face tightens in shock and fear as he writes it. Close-up of Jineon's eye, looking bored on the surface, but clearly noticing the physician's reaction. Jineon eats calmly while Gongsun Myung stands by with a fake smile, holding the brush but clearly tense. The scene warps around Gongsun Myung as his face twists and a strange aura bursts out, revealing his hidden, creepy side. The wooden pillar shatters as Jineon casually flicks it, showing terrifying strength. Gongsun Myung grabs his neck, stunned and sweating. He realizes this sick, young master is dangerous. Jineon points at him, eyes cold, and makes it clear he's no longer the weak Li Jineon from before. The physician panics and asks what Li Jineon means. Jineon sits across the table, arms crossed, saying he'll start with the Dragon Phoenix soup. Close-up of the soup, he explains that for a healthy person it might be a tonic, but for someone as weak as the original Li Jineon, it's basically poison. MC calmly drinks the soup, saying that for someone as sick as Li Jineon, this so-called tonic is basically poison. The physician smirks inwardly, thinking the soup must have wrecked the MC's energy. The MC calls him out for secretly checking his pulse when he didn't die, and the physician panics and pretends to be shocked. Jineon leans on his hand, twirling a spoon, saying there's one more important point. We see the old Jineon weak and sick, refusing the tonic and sending everyone out of the room. Back in the present, Jineon looks straight at the physician, saying he hadn't even bothered to hide his intent to kill him. Close-up of the physician's face. He realizes he's been found out and stiffens, eyes wide and tense. Jineon sits calmly at the table, still eating. He tells the physician he's clearly not acting alone and orders him to write down the name of the person who gave the order. Side view of the physician turning away a bit, pretending to be hurt and innocent, asking why Jineon suspects a kind man, like him while still trying to play the victim. The physician covers his face, sighing, as if he's conflicted. Li Jineon watches him coldly. The old man drops the act and grins with glowing red eyes, revealing his twisted nature. Jineon smirks, saying he's finally shown his true colors and thinks how stupid he was to try to let this man die peacefully. The physician thinks darkly that, if needed, he'll kill all the servants to keep them quiet. He pulls out a hidden needle and moves toward Jineon, pretending to speak politely. Before he can act, Jineon's eyes flare and he smashes the old man's face into the table with a brutal palm strike. The physician's face caves in from a brutal punch, teeth and blood flying. He crashes to the floor while Jineon calmly stands there, holding a chicken leg, unfazed. Close-up of Jineon taking a bite of the chicken, eyes cold, as he keeps talking like nothing happened. While munching on chicken, he winces internally, annoyed at how weak and painful this new body still is. Close-up of his hand, he resolves to recover his strength as fast as possible. Sitting over the collapsed physician, still eating, he thinks that once he's back in shape, it won't matter even if the entire Yunha merchant group is behind this plot. Woozing decides that once he's back with the Yuna merchant group, he'll thoroughly investigate Gongsun Miyang. As he rises from the table, his body sways, and he bends over, suddenly feeling unwell. A sharp pain pierces his head, and he grabs his forehead, confused by the sudden headache. A sharp pain and a shout pull him back to reality. His eyes narrow in shock. A faded memory surfaces of Gongsun Miyang standing before him, expression cold and unreadable. He sees himself and Gongsun from afar, like watching a scene from the past, and dread rises as he realizes these are old memories returning. Li Jinian's past memories rush into his mind all at once. A tear falls as he silently accepts those memories. The pain clears like water calming, and he understands what just happened. Li Jinian is the first son of the powerful Yunhe merchant group. He isn't as smart and capable as his second brother, and he isn't as strong as his third brother. In his family, he's seen as the disappointing, useless eldest son. Jinian throws money around on booze and women, trying to cover up his insecurities. Eventually, he realizes how badly he's messed up and decides to change. By then, his body is already ruined, and it's too late to fix the damage. Jinian pieces together that the original owner was banished to this villa, and the main clan no longer cares what happens here. He thinks how the real problem at first was being reincarnated without this body's memories. Now that the memories have surfaced, he decides he can finally focus entirely on martial arts and getting stronger. He thinks that with this gifted body, his past life knowledge, and a few rare elixirs, he could get strong very quickly. He suddenly freezes, realizing something's off with that plan. He looks over the room's valuables and sees piles of gold, but no elixirs, realizing the former owner spent everything and left him with none. Jinian thinks about how rich this body is and decides there's no elixir he can't buy with enough money. He glances at Gongsun Miyang's corpse on the table and casually decides they should bury him. The scene shifts to a bright mountain landscape, signaling a new day and the next part of the story. At the villa, a maid quietly sweeps fallen petals in the courtyard. A wide view shows the whole pavilion surrounded by blooming cherry trees, petals drifting in the air. The scene shifts to the same valley and trees as the narration marks, 1 year later. In the front courtyard, the maids are sweeping when a swordsman walks up to them, making one maid jump a little in surprise. The man smiles in his guard uniform, sword at his waist, and a letter in hand, saying he's here to see young master Li Jinian. One maid happily points him toward Jinian's direction and starts to lead the way, the other maid following behind. Inseop suddenly senses something and looks over. He spots Jinian inside, sitting shirtless and training. Realizing who it is, Inseop is stunned that this powerful-looking man is young master Li Jinian. Mock Inseop bows from the courtyard and announces he's brought a letter from the main clan. Jinian pauses mid-training, walks over and holds out his hand, telling him to show the letter. Mock stares at him, thinking how the Jinian he remembers was a weak, coughing mess and wondering where that frail young master went. The guard grumbles that his arm is about to fall off from holding the letter so long. Jinian now sits with him at a table, calmly reading through the letter. The letter explains that his father has suddenly collapsed, is bedridden with no clear cause, and that the merchant group's leadership is to be passed to Li Jinian. Jinian notes that the letter doesn't say why his father suddenly fell ill. Mock Inseop hesitates, clearly knowing more. He explains that the merchant leader's collapse is most likely connected to the scheming Ouyang clan. The guard says the Yunhe group has been paying protection fees to the Ouyang clan, and now the amount is unbearable. Jinian asks if the Ouyang clan actually did anything to deserve the higher fees. The guard explodes in anger and calls the Ouyang clan dogs. Mock says when the little deity sect raised trade taxes, the guards had to deal with the mess. They went to the Ouyang clan for help, but the clan brushed them off and did nothing. Mock adds that no one dare protest because the one in charge is Ouyang Hu. He recognizes Ouyang Hu as a famous, powerful figure in the Jianghu. Jinian assumes Ouyang looks down on merchants and thinks, if I handle the Ouyang clan, the problem's solved. Mok nervously says there's actually another important reason behind the merchant leader's collapse. The guard explains that the second and third young masters had a fierce sword duel, and Jinian's father collapsed after watching it. Jinian guesses it was from anger, and Mok confirms that's exactly what happened. Mok says he can't believe they drew swords in front of the merchant leader. Jinian tells him not to worry. He won't be punished for it. Jinian decides he can't just sit and watch his family fall apart. He suddenly gets up, leaving the letter with Mok, who's confused. Jinian walks off with a firm resolve, ready to step into the conflict himself. Jinian decides he won't just watch from afar and says he'll go to the main clan himself. Mok is stunned, realizing the once frail young master has completely changed. Back with the guards, Mok excitedly brags that Jinian's body and martial arts are now perfect, like a real powerhouse. The red-haired guard captain notices the commotion and turns his head toward the noise. Inside the guard station, the men burst into loud laughter when they hear Mok Inseop say that young Master Jinian has become a martial artist. They keep mocking Jinian, joking that he's only good at fooling around in bed and bragging that, if someone like him counts as a martial artist, then they must be peerless masters. The ponytailed guard keeps joking, saying Mok Inseop's story about Jinian sounds fake. He goes too far, implying even a rumor about the vice captain having a lover would be more believable. The vice captain, Han Yip, appears behind him, slams his head, and calmly confirms that young Master Jinian has really recovered his health. Han Yip says Jinian always had a good body even as a kid, so him becoming a martial artist isn't that strange. He asks Mok Inseop when Jinian plans to return, while still smacking the red-haired guy's head. A guard rushes in and yells that young Master Jinian has arrived, and Mok realizes it's happening right now. Han Yip orders the guards to go greet young Master Jinian. One guy grumbles that they have to bow to a good-for-nothing, but Han Yip reminds him not to forget who pays them and tells them to move. Jinian stands before the main Yunhe merchant group estate, looking up at the massive gate and banners. He steps inside and takes in a huge compound, thinking how ridiculously grand the place is. Jinian takes in the massive estate, realizing the original him was born stupidly rich. He tells the two maids to go rest while he heads to see his father alone. Walking along the riverside corridor, he starts thinking, by the way, as something else crosses his mind. Jinian walks deeper into the estate, realizing no one has come to greet him. He slows down, sensing something off around him. A squad of guards suddenly appears, drawing their swords and blocking his path. Jinian walks in as blades surround him, and the guards formally greet his safe return. Han Yip steps forward, introduces himself as vice captain of the guard squad, and bows with the others. Han Yip looks Jinian over and comments that he's changed so much he's almost hard to recognize. Han Yip politely says he's glad Jinian looks healthy. The red-haired guard fumes, thinking the vice captain has no pride. Flashback, the old Jinian drunkenly clung to maids and shoved Han Yip around, openly looking down on him. Back to the present, Jinian grabs Han Yip by the shoulder with a relaxed smile, while the red-haired guard thinks he's about to be mocked again. The guards watch Jinian walk ahead and whisper that he's changed so much it feels like they're in someone else's house. Han Yip quietly studies Jinian's back, seeing how different he really is now. He smiles to himself, as if he's glad and a little proud of change. Han Yip walks beside Jinian toward the main hall, thinking he feels more like an ally than an enemy. At the doorway, Han Yip says he's already told Jinian's father he's coming. Jinian thanks him and steps inside. As Jinian enters the room, a man inside greets him loudly with a playful, well. As Jinian heads inside with Han Yip, a red-haired man swaggers in, stretching and acting casual. He suddenly throws an arm over Jinian's shoulder like they're close. The man smirks and mockingly greets him. This is Li Jian, the Yunhe merchant group's third son. Jian leans on Jinian's shoulder, saying he looks like a totally different person now. Jineon gives him a sharp look, which Jian teases him about. Han Yip recalls how Jian used to beat Jineon and worries the same thing might happen again just after his return. Han Yip steps between them, saying the brothers finally reunited and should be happy to see each other. Jineon shoves Jian's arm away and snaps, asking who gave him permission to touch him. Jineon appears behind Han Yip in silence, making him stiffen. Jian fumes inside, grumbling that dealing with this good-for-nothing was bad enough, and now even the vice-captain seems to be looking down on him. Jineon's voice cuts in coldly, asking if he needs to teach Jian a lesson so he never dares look him in the eyes again. Jineon suddenly grabs Jian's face, cutting off his rant as Jian stumbles over his words in surprise. Jineon swings his arm and smashes his palm across Jian's face. Jian's head whips to the side as he's knocked back, blood flying from his mouth. Jian crashes to the floor while Han Yip stands frozen, staring in shock. Jian tumbles to the floor from the punch while Jineon steps in, gripping his collar and calling his name. Jian, still held by the collar, says he'd actually been excited on the way here to see his brother. That thought just makes him snap. Jian clamps down on Jineon's wrist and erupts in rage. Jineon casually holds Jian down with one hand while Jian struggles and swears at him. Jineon repeats the insult with a crooked smile, then tells Jian he should be calling him Big Brother instead. Morning sky over the massive Yunhe estate, calm and bright. The guards stop chatting as they notice a robed figure strolling down the corridor toward the inner residence. Li Waiyan, the studious second son and overseer, adjusts his glasses and murmurs that this is their father's room. Waiyan panics, ordering the guards to hurry and separate his brothers before things get worse. He rushes down the corridor toward the source of the commotion, robes fluttering as the guards scramble to follow. As he turns the corner, he sees Jineon already dominating the situation, with Jian on the floor and everyone else frozen, shocked by how much the eldest brother has changed. Jineon pins Jian in a headlock and tells him to shut up since they're right outside their father's room. Still holding Jian, Jineon casually calls out, asking if that's Waiyan. Waiyan halts, confused, wondering what exactly he's seeing. Jineon has Jian pinned in front of the table while Waiyan sits silently, watching both of them. Waiyan smiles and says he's heard Jineon has returned. Looking at the two of them, Waiyan comments that Jineon seems to be in good health now, while Jian struggles in his grip. Jineon answers calmly that he's fine now. Waiyan pulls back his sleeve, revealing a wrapped wrist, and asks if Jian was the one who did it. He starts to say it's not serious, but Jineon instantly lifts his hand toward Jian again, making the youngest panic. Jineon keeps smacking Jian across the face, warning him not to ever raise a sword against his older brother. He says if Jian doesn't want another beating, he'd better remember that. Jian, bloodied and shaking, holds his arms up and forces out that he understands. Jian stares in disbelief, thinking, Li Jian beat me up? He remembers how Jineon used to be weak and an easy target. Waiyan quietly notes that Jineon really turned the tables this time, since in the past all he could do was barely dodge Jian's bullying. Waiyan eyes Jineon carefully, saying he feels like a completely different person. Jineon just smiles and says Waiyan has good eyes. Jineon's attention shifts to a pile of neatly rolled scrolls on the table. He asks what they are, and Waiyan explains they're the employee lists he needs to take to tomorrow's conference. Jineon runs his finger down the employee list, stopping on Gongsun Myung's name. He thinks he wanted to know who recommended Gongsun Myung, but now he's already figured it out. The text explains that the same person recommended everyone on that page, from the vice guard captain down to the front gate guards. Jineon connects all the listed employees back to Ouyang Hu. He sets the scroll down and calls Waiyan and Jian over. He asks them straight if anyone has been working with the Ouyang clan. Waiyan and Jian jolt and throw their hands up when Jineon suspects them. Jineon pauses mid-sentence, about to press them further, Waiyan and Jian quickly shout that there's no way they'd ever work with the Ouyang clan. Waiyan and Jian loudly back Jinian, saying the Uni merchant group must stay in their family and protect their father's legacy. Hearing that, Jinian accepts their stance and, in his mind, crosses out the option of killing them. Jinian then asks if all the higher-ups will attend tomorrow's conference, and Waiyan confirms they will. Jinian decides he'll also attend tomorrow's conference. He leaves the room, saying he's going to visit their father. Waiyan and Jian are left behind, wondering what on earth happened to change him at the safe house. Waiyan and Jian argue outside, regretting not going to Jua, a mountain instead. A servant announces that the eldest son has arrived at the merchant leader's room and receives permission to let him in. Jinian walks through the doorway into his father's quarters. Jinian enters the room and his veteran father, Li Xiangmin, acknowledges his arrival. Li Xiangmin asks about the commotion outside, and Jinian casually dismisses it as nothing important. Jinian brings up that he heard his father collapsed from stress, and Li Xiangmin admits his old body can no longer handle the constant pressure. Xiangmin studies Jinian's face, touches his cheek, and notes how much he's changed. He smiles and says he's just happy that his eldest son came back healthy. Jinian agrees out loud, but inwardly finds it odd that his father isn't more suspicious of the change. Jinian thinks back to his own life, realizing he never had parents, while Jinian's memories show a father walking with his child in the rain. That contrast hits him, and he silently takes it in. He notes that, in Jinian's memories, his father was always present in his life. In Jinian's memories, his younger self walks while tightly holding his father's hand under the sunset. He recalls how large and dependable that hand used to feel. Back in the present, he realizes his father's body has become thin and small compared to those memories. Jinian tells his father they just have to get rid of whatever's stressing him out. He says he'll handle it himself and tells his father not to worry about it. His father quietly repeats, "Eliminate," while Jinian is already set on taking action. Jinian tells his father it's nothing and that he'll take care of it, then stays by his bedside with a light smile. The scene jumps to the next day at the Yunhe estate courtyard. The Yunhe merchant group conference begins, with a higher-up seated inside the main hall and everyone gathered for the meeting. Ouyang, who is shown at the conference, identified as the guard squad leader and the Ouyang clan's martial master. One of the guards leans in and whispers to Ouyang, who, drawing his attention to someone. Jinian sits in the main seat with his arms crossed, calmly observing the conference. Keycap 1 guards notice Jinian at the conference and whisper about why he's there. Keycap 2 Ouyang, who leans over to a colleague, saying Jinian is probably worried about his position. Keycap 3 Waiyan continues the meeting and asks if anyone has objections before moving on. Someone at the meeting speaks up. Ouyang, who says Jinian still has no guard and offers to recommend one. The others mutter that half the group is already Ouyang clan and grumble that he's pushing it. The room goes quiet. The guards glance at each other, tense, but no one dares speak against Ouyang, whose proposal. Seeing the silence, Ouyang, who smirks to himself and moves to push his plan through.